We have many widespread species, which that number signifies, and many endemic species in a given region. Europe being a notable exception with a lack of endemism, and Africa too, of course. But the species diversity in this genus, as you can see from these numbers, is concentrated in the greater Himalaya. So I had multiple hypotheses I wanted to test with the phylogenies we're generating for this genus. First two I'm going to go into right now is that I'm going to test whether the center of diversity is the origin of the genus. And I'm going to test whether the wide breadth of morphological diversity found in Oceania can be explained through numerous or few long-distance dispersal events. There's a lot of text on this slide, but other authors have previously hypothesized an origin of Stellaria. Fax and Hoffman, who put together the last global treatment of Stellaria, hypothesized that the ancestral homeland of the genus is in the mountains of the east part of Central Asia to be found. And to me, that implies the greater Himalaya. Here's also the most forms to be found, the most species to be found, so greater Himalaya. In 1952, Crozat published hypothesis that the diversity in Eurasia was fed from the south, from the southern hemisphere. In his meaning, that was Africa and or Australasia, rather than South America. But he also qualified that and said it's manifest that this genus had an important secondary origin in what could be said as the greater Himalaya. Other authors and other widespread northern hemisphere genera who have investigated widespread northern hemisphere genera, that is, have found a center of origin and diversity in the greater Himalaya. So Lagotis, you can see that depicted there. Scrophularia, you can see that depicted there. And Pyrola also is hypothesized to have an origin there. Contrast, other widespread northern plant lineages have probable Arctic or other origins that have also undergone some diversification in the Himalaya. And a little bit of background on hypothesis 2 regarding dispersal events to Oceania. Here's the breadth of morphological diversity you can see there. And it pretty much mimics or parallels the breadth of diversity of the rest of morphological diversity of the rest of the genus across the rest of the world. So succulent forms, apetalous forms, scandent ground sprawling forms, a species that looks a lot like Stellaria media complex, species that looks a lot like Palustris or Longippes and some of those other members. And the key thing is only 12% of the genus exists in that region, across Australia and New Zealand, I should say. Here are the methods, so abbreviated methods for the first two hypotheses. We used DD-RADseq approach and maximum likelihood for the phylogeny in the first place. Coded tip states as one or more of 8 areas, and reconstructed history of this group with biogeographics. So sampled 92% of the genus Stellaria to this point. Here are my sampling localities. Here's the phylogeny. I don't want you to dwell on reading the tips or for now, but here's the alignment length. There are 107 tips here, so some specimens, some species have multiple representatives in this phylogeny. Just want to point out there's 2 major clades of core Stellaria, which is the group's sister to Cerastium, and RADseq infers relationships in this group with high support values, generally speaking. So here's my best model in biogeobears so far. We see a diversification event in the Himalaya. that explains most of the diversity, and another smaller diversification event in the Himalaya. So the center of diversity is not the origin of the genus. But Crozat was right on the second point. There's an important center of secondary origins or diversifications in the greater Himalaya. Hypothesis 2, Oceania forms a derived clade, and I can see evidence for 2 long-distance dispersal events, or transoceanic dispersal events explaining this diversity. So 1 Australian clade, 1 New Zealand clade. Just want to qualify that we're lacking 1 species from New Zealand in this phylogeny still. Other observations here, some 3 migrations to South America, and Africa is derived within a Eurasian group. We'll move on to these 2 hypotheses now, that Stellaria originated in the Middle Miocene, and that Beringias facilitated multiple movements into the New World, given a Eurasian origin. Oh, I forgot to mention that. My results actually support an origin, the most probable origin of this genus in northeastern Asia, but it's a little ambiguous still. But the sister genus Cerastium is shown to originate in Eurasia, so that would also support that this group originated there. Northeastern Eurasia. So the split of the 2 major, what were formerly considered subplant families of Caryophyllaceae, is hypothesized as being in the late Eocene. All other divergence time studies in Caryophyllaceae calibrate with a single fossil that I'm going to show you at this node, at this split of the 2 major subfamilies, Caryophyllaceae and Alcinoideae. And I want to test if rad-seq data agree. So here's what other studies find: divergence time with Stellaria and some of its closest relatives, approximately 10 to 15 million years ago. So use same rad-seq data with a much constrained alignment to get it to working in beast, and calibrated with this same fossil, and here's the split of some of the major groups that it's placed at. So primary calibration results support an origin around 11 million years ago, plus or minus a few million, obviously. Here's the calibration node. So in agreement with other studies that have used fewer loci. So calibrating for the divergence of Stellaria at about 12 to 13 million years ago, based on secondary calibration. Both the Himalayan and the Oceanian diversifications occurred in the early Pleistocene, within the past 2 million years. So there's some evidence there for a rapid diversification of this genus in the Himalaya. And here's a figure by Wen and al. That just shows evidence for some of the